we have to get collaborative to not just survive, but thrive in a new environment that we're dealing with. And so you're starting to see people actually be more transparent, more collaborative. And that was why the RSA, which is now the REA, was founded, is like, look, we can be collaborative. It does take a level of vulnerability.
Hello, my name is BD Erickson, and welcome to the show. Our guest today is someone I've known for several years now, Mr. Mark Bench. Mark, I know you two ways. Number one, I know that you're the CEO of TriSMART, incredibly successful solar company in Texas that I've looked up to and actually wanted to model. And more recently, in our experience, president of the Residential Solar Association, which is now the Residential Energy Association.
You got it.
So I know you professionally from TriSMART. Start us with some of that. Give us some of your experience as a solar president.
Yeah, man, it's been a fun journey. Very, I guess, extensive in the space of sales. That's the background I come from. So I started my career actually in home security sales with Apex, which is now Vivint.
Okay.
I became very passionate about solar back in 2013, 14. We started out as a dealer for Solar City. So I cut my teeth in the sales side, got really good at it. And then in 2015, 16, we decided that we wanted to take on the operational piece and own the whole customer experience. So we started doing parts of the scope of work that got us involved, like on the HOA permitting, utility side. And then we realized that in order to construct our own projects, we need to secure financing. So, I mean, this kind of dates us back to the Green Sky days. We were using Green Sky. And then one of our claims to fame, we were a partner of Sonova. And then Hayes Barnard launched LoanPal with 4 companies. And we were honored to be one of the first 4 that they chose to pilot their program. So in 2016, we were their first funded residential loan in the residential solar sector. So we've had a really cool journey. We've done in Texas. We just chosen to focus in Texas actually as an installer. The discipline has been, regional focused, which has taken a lot for me because I like to go big usually. And so, but it's been good for the organization to stay focused just in Texas. We've done about 17,000 installs over the course of time. And yeah, I've just put an immense focus on our people. We have multiple types of customers in this industry. As an installer, you've got your sales teams. That's your customer. You got to take care of them. And then of course you have your customers that you install, the homeowners. They're important to the whole process. They're the most important piece. And then you have your financing and manufacturing customers as well. So I always looked at it from that perspective of how do we serve each of those sectors and take care of them. And then the technology piece as well. So yeah, it's been a journey for sure. I've learned a lot. I've made a lot of mistakes. I'm still making mistakes, we're going through it. So I could elaborate on any, I guess, specific sector. Generally speaking, I really appreciate the industry. It's given a lot to me and my family and of course the TriSMART family. We've had a lot of people that we've brought to the organization and developed them and develop different strategies in the industry. And then, of course, the Residential Solar Association, I got invited to that party. That was not something that I had orchestrated or engineered by any means. There was a group of people that were highly committed to our industry. Yeah. And they decided to take a leap of faith and invite about 24 people got invited to an initial meeting in February of 2024. And I got invited and I wasn't actually interested in going. My chief revenue officer at the time, Zach Hall, said, you need to go to this. I said, okay, fine. And I went and there were some of my competitors there. There were people that I didn't know, but within 2 to 3 days, Ben Skemper led us through really a connection activity, a brainstorming activity. And we were all best friends by the end of it. And we decided, hey, we're going to do something with this. And the Residential Solar Association, I guess you could say, was formed.
So let's give some context to our
Yeah.
viewers. So the viewer's like, well, why am I listening? What value can I draw from this? And we appreciate the viewer and the listener. And the reason that I've looked up to you and invited you to come is because we all know in business, things just don't naturally go perfectly. One of my favorite stories is when I had to ask the homeowner for her Lexus keys. And she said, do you need to move my car? And I said, no, I need my drill back. She says, well, why is my drill in your car? And I said, because when I put it down on your roof and it started sliding, that's where it stopped. So it wasn't that everything goes well. It's how charming you can be when it goes wrong, right? And it was really funny. SafeLight came out that day. We had a brand new windshield for her. She said she actually had 2 chips and SafeLight was on her to-do list. So actually getting her a new windshield, we checked something off the box that was on her to-do list and it cost her nothing and we covered it and we still got a 5-star review. So I think for our listener, the residential solar associations, their guiding purpose from what I've experienced is to really help all of us in the industry do it to the best of our ability. And the reason that Mark was invited as one of those 24 people is because you have a reputation of really trying to do it the best way. Are there a couple of lessons that you've learned in that you could just share for our listener on that journey, Mark?
Yeah, I genuinely care, right? And I do try and do things the right way. And as you put it, it gets messy, and when I find out that we've made a mistake or that I've made a mistake, it's confronting. It's like eating a really piece of humble pie and It doesn't feel good. And owning that it's part of what we do. And the way in which you own it is important. So yeah, there's been a lot of mistakes along the way. We've had different examples of, an installation gone bad. A lot of people have those stories. We've installed solar on the wrong roof before, had to take it off, replace the roof, right? And in all those moments, I've done my best to at least bring the level of integrity that I'd want if it were like my own grandma, right? That's kind of the
Mark,
the
you've delivered on that. That's why I wanted you on the show, not to be repetitive. And B, why the Residential Association, Residential Energy Association now needs people who actually care. So much money has been made in our industry, right? And money has a tendency to sometimes bring out the worst in people. It really does. And I was a Tony Robbins trainer for a long time, and we would tell people, money is a vehicle to some feelings, but if you're addicted to gambling, throw money at that. You're addicted to drugs or sex, throw money at that. That doesn't help, right? And so we've learned so much over the last few years, and so much money has been made and drawn some of the worst out of the people. What are some things that you've seen that the industry is kind of collectively realizing that individually and wholly we can do better and that we probably need to do better at?
Yeah. I think, a few things. I think the industry is starting to realize like no one can do it alone. Even though we're the long tail, if you will, from a policy perspective, we can be the most influential, but we can't do it alone. There's a lot of people that are starting to come together and say, okay, look, I've been beaten up pretty good in this industry, especially the installation network, with all the liability that an installer carries. You mentioned that there's been a lot of money being made. I could line up 100 installers that probably argue with you all day long about that. Because the margins are squeezed so tight.
Yeah.
And we think that, when you do spreadsheet math, you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to make a killing, doing this. It's never that way. In fact, you end up losing money or, So I think the industry is really connecting with, we have to get collaborative to not just survive, but thrive in a new environment that we're dealing with. And so you're starting to see people actually be more transparent, more collaborative. And that was why the RSA, which is now the REA, was founded, is like, look, we can be collaborative. It does take a level of vulnerability. And that probably goes to the measure of, I was willing to be more vulnerable, collaborative, transparent than most people earlier on. And naturally, I think people just gravitated to that and said, look, can you kind of step in and fill this role? And I said, I don't know if I'm the guy, but sure. As long as we're all for creating this entity as bigger than the industry is now, and it's going to survive any one person. That's the whole intent, right? And so ego has to be set aside. and we all have it.
Of course.
But when you get a group of leaders that are all willing to set that aside for the greater good, that's really important.
I love it. It's so rare. And for the listener, we're competitors.
Yeah.
And so you get 24 people in a room that are all competitors, and you say, we're going to set that aside for a minute, and we're going to share our trade secrets. Here are some things that I did poorly, not because I was stupid or nefarious. I didn't know any better. I didn't have a better system. I didn't know what I didn't know. But now that I know not to do that, I don't mind helping a young installer to not stick his fingers in that same fan. And do I see him now as a competitor or as a kindred spirit? And one of the things that I love about the RSA and the REA and why I'm a member and why I'm a proponent and why we're going tonight is because at some point you have to be safe and willing to be vulnerable and share some of your trade secrets and not see other people as a threat, but as a way that we can all bring each other together and ideally, make it better. So what are some things that you've really seen the industry improve on that's impressed you and given you hope for the RSA, REA in our industry, Mark?
Yeah. What has the industry been improving on? I think, well, for certain, the one thing that I've noticed is people are getting more connected to policy. So in order to write good policy, you do have to share practices. And so we have been good at sharing what we consider best practices and comparing notes. Like, how do you conduct a welcome call survey? How are you doing a site survey? How are you handling main service panel upgrades? How are you handling your labor force? What kind of insurance policies are you requiring your subcontractors to have? These are all things that people just assume to know, but the barrier of entry in our industry it moves a little bit depending on what state you're in.
Sure.
And so the level of competence is different in each state. And so just sharing those best practices across even state lines or even within the state have really helped contractors consider at least other ways of doing business to either save money or increase safety or improve consumer protection. And it happens in small strides. I think people that are trying to take all this on in one fell swoop, it's really difficult because you have to, depending on the size of your organization, the smaller you are, the easier it is to adopt and adapt things.
Right. And there are so many different chunks too, right? Our industry has really been 3 or 4 chunks. It's been the sales team. It's been the finance companies and the actual installers. And it's been my experience as a human being that we're built, even as little kids, with a level of wanting fairness, right? And it seems like in any industry or just for potluck dinner, the people that do the most work or the hardest work or do the most should be compensated the most or loved the most or thanked the most. It should at least kind of be on par with the value that I added is the value that I received. And one of the things that I've seen in solar is, so the sales guys, and nothing against them, I'm a salesperson myself, that oftentimes they add actually the least value, or they're the ones that make it the messiest and they make the most money. And then we've got Chuck in a truck and he's there early and he's on time and he goes up a tall ladder and it's scary. And he's carrying a super heavy panel and it's scary. And his company has got trucks and leases and gas and tires. And those are the guys that are barely surviving it. So one of the things that I've saw, which has hurt as a construction company too, and as an owner, that oftentimes the people that really did the heaviest lift were the least compensated. And that's something for me, I would really love to see change because there was really no shortage of money, right? And oftentimes it was the sales crews and not the beautiful people that actually had to hump that scary big panel up that rotten ladder.
Yeah, that's a conversation that can be very confronting in the industry. From my perspective, I'll push back a little bit here because I am a sales guy at heart, right? I've knocked a lot of doors. I've done a lot of consulting and things like that. But I think the difficult challenge there is without a sale, nothing happens.
Nothing happens.
And the type of work is different. It's not, I tend to not go, which one's harder? I look at, okay,
it's different.
What's required?
Yeah.
The Chuck in a truck, if you will, they have the most amount of liability. So what kind of economics need to be restructured in our industry to ensure that we protect the installer and keep them in business? Not because what they do is more or less valuable. It's just what's necessary to keep those customers taken care of for long after the sales teams come and go.
Yeah.
Now, sales teams, there is a level of skill and willingness that most people aren't willing to do. That's why less than 1% of people are actually successful in sales. And that is to be compensated too. But there is certainly a balancing act between the customer offering. What is it that we're offering the customer? And that's the approach we've taken recently, which is how do we drive the most amount of value to the customer so that solar is not sold, it's bought.
Yeah.
Like people are asking for it.
Yeah.
Then you can play with the commissions a little bit more. If you make it much easier for the sales guy, then you can reinvest that commission back into the customer and the contractor to ensure that the proper liability is covered. And so, if you get into the battle of, who's most important and who carries the most significant workload and who has the harder job, that seems to be a losing battle frequently, at least in the conversations I have. So I tend to focus on, okay, there is value propositions on all fronts, right? How do we accommodate the requirements of our industry and what evidence do we have that this money should be redistributed?
Yeah.
Financing companies need to reevaluate their fees and their structure. They have liability. Contractors, the same thing. But I think what's happened in our industry is installation companies lack the confidence and the competence to actually negotiate on their own behalf.
Yeah.
A lot of them are coming from the construction industry that don't have sales experience. And you got sales guys who are good at what they do. They're also good at negotiating.
Right.
And look, everyone has the right to go get as much as they can for themselves. And so sales reps typically do get what they ask for because the contractor doesn't know how to go build their own sales organizations.
I think that's a great point. And I accept your coaching and your distinction on that. It's all valuable, but it all has to be done. Right? From licking a stamp to doing the hardest thing. It all has to be done. One's often a better negotiator than the other one and navigates that better. And I don't in any way suggest that sales is easy. It's not. I'm a people pleaser. I want to be loved. So I have a really hard time closing a deal because I just want them to have it because I think it's great and because I love it. And we know in the landscape of sales or anything, nothing happens until the sale takes place. Now, when the sale takes place, there's an opportunity for Chuck to have a compelling job, right? And watching those companies maybe just negotiate for themselves a better piece of it because we want the whole thing to go well. And ultimately, the person that we serve is the customer, right? And that's another reason why I'm such an advocate of yours. You've done it so well in the REA is everybody has to win. The business has to win or it goes out of business. And the customer has to win or people won't love solar. And I personally don't think solar is going anywhere. So I know we're running out of time. We saw the end of the tax credits and, that created a lot of fear. Before I ask you, I'll tell you a belief that I have, and then I would love your feedback as an expert. So they say, and I don't know how you'd fact check this, Mark, that AI right now is consuming between 2 and 3% of America's electricity. Is that true? I don't know. That's what AI said.
I think that's conservative.
About itself. Okay. So they also say that when the big one in Texas comes online and the big one in Nebraska comes online, that number is going to move to 12 or 14%. Well, if you remember supply and demand, Business School 101, the first day, when the demand goes up, the supply has to go up to meet it. And we know in California right now, there's a lot of jurisdictions, they don't have enough electricity now. So they're turning off this 100,000 air conditioners so these ones can turn on. And if you live in the San Bernardino Valley in the summertime, you don't want your air conditioner off for an hour, right? And so if that's true, then electricity prices will have to go up simply because of supply and demand. And when electricity prices go up, I think solar is going to be more viable over the next year or two than it's ever been. Do you agree, disagree?
Yeah,
how do you feel about that,
Yeah,
Mike?
I think solar is here to stay. That actually leads into the REA. We are an energy association.
Right.
And because storage is such a critical component to all of this, you're going to have more power plants coming online, and there's going to be an abundance of power depending on the time of day that needs to be stored, deployed, monetized appropriately. Right. And solar systems do probably need to get bigger. Right. Yeah. And that's something we've been working on our modeling too. But yeah, solar is here to stay for sure. Batteries are absolutely here to stay.
Here they come, baby.
I mean, even our policy even indicates that batteries are an acceptable, and it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on, the fact that those tax credits are going to survive, longer. It's a good leading indicator that both sides of the aisle on a policy side are interested in creating more storage assets. So most installation companies are now becoming energy companies that are attaching solar, right? So yeah, absolutely. The demand, not just from an AI perspective and a data center perspective, but also just the growth. You have lots of people that are moving into an electrification model.
Yeah.
So you combine all three of those avenues of consumption of electricity. Solar is inevitably an important piece to our energy infrastructure.
So I'm a clean energy guy.
Yep.
So I'm going to plug it just for a second and have that conversation, because I tell people a lot of times that solar is clean in that it's renewable. It isn't necessarily clean as it relates to the qualities of electricity. So a guy with a ham radio, for example, that interesting rascal that's trying to talk to New Zealand right now on his radio, he oftentimes can't have solar, because the way an inverter works by turning DC into AC creates dirty electricity and electromagnetic fields. And there's a lot of talk right now that electromagnetic fields are probably damaging to the biological. Now, whether someone chooses to believe that or not, there's no doubt that dirty electricity is a real thing. And solar isn't necessarily the cleanest that way. And so, how have you handled or looked at energy management systems or products like static as we really move towards more solar panels and battery, which is DC?
Yeah, I think that's a really underserved section of our industry, candidly. I didn't know anything about it. I knew a little bit about it until I met you. And I really appreciate the time you take in educating all of us about this, because typically, at least in our industry, we're so focused on just making the basics work. We don't get into the details of the impact of the electric magnetic fields that are out there ruining our biological makeup, or the impact that could have. And so we need advocates for all sectors, even what are we going to do to recycle the panels? But yeah, more importantly, there's energy management profiling equipment out there that I think people should be looking into. My team did a deep dive on your product. They like it. I think it's great. We're just looking at the economics of how we can make that work and incorporate it into our install without increasing cost. And you've provided a lot of guidance on how that works. So, right now we're not doing anything yet, but I've indicated to you that that's what we're going to be doing this year as soon as we, raise our capital that we need, because we believe in it. It's just a matter of being educated and making sure you come up with a plan to implement it without, ruining your entire process, which I think is pretty easy to do with some of these products like yours. So
it all has to fit, right? And everybody has to win.
Right.
And that, like everything, takes some education.
Yep.
And then some focus and some diligence.
Yeah, you got your work cut out for you for sure.
Amen to that. I'm built for it. Listen, I know we're out of time. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
For sharing your wisdom with us today, Mark, and being on our show.
Yeah, I appreciate it. For anyone listening that's looking for more guidance, I think just tapping into the networks, right? People are willing to share. You just got to be willing to ask and put yourself out there. Sometimes it's just as hard for people to ask for help as it is for the people there's a lot of people that want to share their ideas and what they've learned. Because often people who are going through it don't actually know what they're learning until they articulate it.
Right.
Right. So sometimes the teacher or the sharer in this case gets more out of sharing than they may realize, because they articulate the actual journey they've been on.
Yeah.
And that helps materialize, what they're going through. And TriSMART's not exempt. We're going through a lot right now. I'm in the process of raising, tax equity and capital to really resurrect the business. I've unfortunately had to furlough a bunch of people, and it's been very uncomfortable for me, but it's been really cool in the same token to see how the leaders of the industry are rallying behind me. They're saying, look, we're not being judgmental. We're being supportive in the way, like, what do you need? How can I help?
Yes.
Unfortunately, I don't even know what I need, but if I think of anything, I'll let you know. And it's just cool to see how many people reach out and support. And there's always going to be people that I've upset or pissed off. And that's also hard for me. I'm like you, or I'm a people pleaser. I want to make sure everyone is good with me.
Yeah.
But that's probably one recommended piece of advice is do your best to take care of people. But good gosh, don't let it eat you up. You're going to make mistakes. I've made mistakes. I'm a human being. I screw up. I miscalculate a number. We run the best we can for as long as we can. And there's just a time where you have to kind of resettle and get true to yourself, and don't let the naysayers pull you down. And it has been interesting to see who shows up for you, and then also who isn't. And
find out who your friends are.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I love about the REA too, is I've had my solar company for 18 years, and I tell people all the time I'm good at it because I've made so many mistakes.
Yeah.
Right. And when you're not necessarily making mistakes because you're nefarious or you're stupid. You don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And then you don't know what to ask. And it's sure hard sometimes to be humble and to be vulnerable and ask. And I think that you said something that's so true and beautiful, that when you ask some people, sometimes they can't wait to tell you. They love to tell you. They love to share it. They love to make your journey better. And so I think that I'm going to do a little plug for REA2, Residential Energy Association. Join. There's not been one meeting that I've been on where I didn't learn something about taxes or domestic bonus content or, a sales presentation or something. I always leave, even after my 18 years, with value. And I know that I've gotten way more value from my membership than the nominal fee. And so I encourage people to look up to guys like you who are doing it to the best of your ability to do it well, and to reach out to organizations like REA, because there's a bunch of beautiful people in solar.
So many. Lots of solid leaders. They
Beautiful
just show
people.
up and they just give, willingly. And yeah, I appreciate it. I think the industry needs more of that, which is why I love what the REA stands for. So yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been fun to connect and really reconnect with what I'm committed to, and what I've learned and what I'm going to continue to learn through this crazy stage that we're in right now. So
I love it. What I love about you, it's not what you say, it's what you do, and you do it. Thanks for being on our show, Mark.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening. Remember to like and subscribe. See you on the next show.